This episode of the Burnout Recovery Podcast is brought to you by MEGA, your medical indemnity partner. Whether you're starting out in your career or have decades of experience, MEGA helps you thrive with support that goes beyond insurance. Enjoy travel benefits like complimentary travel insurance and Qantas points on your membership, plus education, medico-legal support, access to career coaching and wellbeing resources. Visit mega.com.au to learn more. Insurance issued by Medical Insurance Australia, which has not taken into account your objectives or situation. Before you make any decisions about our policies, please read our PDS and consider your needs. Call us for a copy or visit mega.com.au. Busy day, quick question, no time to dig. Heidi Evidence brings the evidence to you. Clear answers with citations you can trust. Completely ad-free, unlimited and region-aligned. Find evidence in the chaos. Search HeidiHealth.com.
Welcome to the Burnout Recovery Podcast, a guiding resource dedicated to healthcare professionals on their journey to overcoming burnout. Spearheaded by Dr. Joe Braid, a certified professional coach and rehabilitation physician.
Hello and welcome back to the Burnout Recovery Podcast. I'm Dr. Joe Braid, and today we're kicking off something I've been really looking forward to. This is the next block of 10 podcast episodes, and I'm starting off with a special 4-part series called The High Performers Paradox. I can see that some of the recent episodes in the last block have landed well. I've had some beautiful personal messages from you. Thank you so much. Around the organizational audit episode. That seemed to land really well for some people, saying, yes, I've got things I can take back to work. This is systems level thinking and really helpful when you feel like there's only so many things you can do on an individual level, and sometimes that's not necessarily shifting the needle the whole way for you. So always great to hear from you. You're welcome to reach out to me through social media. You can reach out to me as a reply to my weekly newsletter that I send. And yeah, I love hearing from you and how things are going for you in your lives. Anyway, getting back to this episode. So this is episode number 186. And there'll be something relatable to you, whether you're saving lives in an emergency department. Maybe you're leading a team in the boardroom, or you're building your own business. Yes, I sure can relate to that. This series is for you. Over the next 4 episodes, we're going to explore the patterns that show up again and again in high performers across every industry. The ones that drive your success and quietly can move you towards burnout at the same time. And so we're starting with the very foundation of that paradox, why the qualities that make you exceptional might also be setting you up to burn out. So let's get into it. I want to start with something personal because I think it'll land differently than if I just start with the research behind this topic. You probably know I've been carrying on about it. It's been such a fun trip recently. I had the privilege of attending a leadership course in Italy. And one of the concepts that I really loved learning more about was the idea that our greatest strengths also carry a shadow. And it was the amazing Tracy Izzard who told us all about this. The very thing you're most known for, most proud of, most relied upon, has also a darker version of itself that emerges maybe when you're under pressure, when you're tired, or when the stakes feel high. And I sat with that for a while because, honestly, my first reaction was resistance. I thought, surely my strengths are just strengths. Surely being reliable, being a careful thinker, being empathetic with my patients, those are good things, full stop. But then, I can think back to some examples where maybe those strengths played out towards the shadow side. I'm a reliable person and I take my commitments seriously. So in clinic, I care deeply about running on time because I know that a patient who's been waiting 45 minutes after their appointment time is already anxious and maybe a bit frustrated also before they've even walked through the clinic door. And that matters to me. But here's what actually happens. A patient arrives late, or someone comes in with 3 problems when I really thought we were just addressing one. or there's a new result that needs to be addressed and looked into and explained there and then. So these are not failures of planning. These are medicine. This is healthcare. This is human beings in healthcare. And yet I notice the cognitive load that kicks in, that mental ticker tape that's running in the background. You're behind, you're behind, you're behind. And then what happens? So my presence in the room shifts. The patient in front of me gets a version of me that's slightly elsewhere. The rapport that I know is central to good care, that therapeutic relationship, gets quietly eroded by my own internal pressure to meet a standard that the situation has already made impossible. So that's not reliability anymore. That turns into rigidity. And the person who pays the price isn't just me. It's also the patient sitting across from me who deserves my full attention. So that was pretty confronting, thinking through that, and one that I've had to keep coming back to. Another strength I identified in this exercise that we did is around cognitive reasoning and the ability to think through complex problems, to analyze, to research. And as a doctor, that's not just a strength, that is a core part of the jobs that we do. But sometimes when I'm under pressure or I'm uncertain, I can retreat into my head, more thinking, more analyzing, and less connecting, less presence. The shadow for cognitive reasoning is emotional absence. And in medicine, that can bring a real cost to working with your team, working with your patients and their families. So I want to bring you to a workplace story from a number of years ago because I think it illustrates this quite clearly. I want to tell you about a doctor I worked with early in my career, and I'm going to keep the details vague to protect everyone involved, but the pattern is one I've seen more than once, and I suspect some of you will recognize it too. So there was a junior doctor in our team, bright, conscientious, genuinely committed to getting things right. And a patient came in with a presentation that was complex, certainly had uncertainty around it as well. And this doctor did what good doctors do. They researched. They looked at the evidence. They called some colleagues to talk it through, and they wanted to be sure before they acted. The problem was, while this was all happening, the patient was lying in bed, waiting, not exactly sure what was going on. And at some point, a decision was made to send them for a CT pulmonary angiogram. This involves contrast dye being injected into a vein, and it can carry its own risks. It's not like the morning bloods round. And this patient was taken for that imaging test without being properly told what it was, why it was happening, or what it might find. And understandably, they were upset, possibly even quite frightened and uncertain. And here's the thing, the doctor's intention was never to cause distress. Quite the opposite. The research, phone calls, the careful thinking things through, all of it came from a place of wanting to do right by this patient. And that strength was real and the care was real. But the shadow of that strength, the retreat into cognitive problem solving, into the avoidance of the uncomfortable conversation at the bedside, meant the patient experienced something very different from what was intended. And that's where that strength became the problem. So let's look into the research that can explain why this pattern can show up so consistently in high performance in every field. The first bit of research comes from Dr. Ryan Niemiec at the VIA Institute, who spent decades studying what he calls character strengths. His research identifies something called the golden mean, the optimal zone for any given strength. Every strength, he argues, exists on a spectrum. There's underuse, there's optimal use, and then there's overuse. And his research shows that high performers almost always err towards overuse, not underuse. We don't burn out because we're not good enough. We burn out because we're really good at one thing and we keep reaching for it, even if the situation is calling for something else. The second piece comes from Dr. Thomas Curran at the London School of Economics, whose large-scale research on perfectionism is some of the most important work in this space. What Curran found is that perfectionism has increased significantly across high-achieving professions over the past 30 years, and that it's one of the strongest predictors of burnout. Not a foreign concept on this podcast, I'm sure you'll agree. But here's the distinction that really matters. He separates healthy high standards from maladaptive perfectionism. Healthy high standards are flexible. You hold them, but you can adapt when circumstances change. Maladaptive perfectionism is rigid. The standard must be met, regardless of context, regardless of cost. One energizes you, the other exhausts you. And most high performers I work with have spent years believing their perfectionism is just high standards. And that's a really tricky thing to end up untangling. The third piece of research comes from stress neuroscience. Dr. Amy Arnsten at Yale has shown through decades of research that chronic stress impairs the prefrontal cortex, that part of your brain responsible for decision-making, judgment, and nuanced thinking. And here's what's particularly relevant for this conversation. When you're under pressure, your brain defaults to its most well-worn pathways, its most familiar tools. So, potentially, the surgeon becomes more controlling in the operating theatre. The CEO starts micromanaging, and the academic rewrites the same paragraph for the fourth time. The doctor retreats further into research and analysis instead of walking to the bedside. These are rough examples, and obviously everybody's different in their different workplaces. This is not a character flaw, but it's your brain under stress reaching for the most familiar tool it has. So put these three together and you get a very predictable pattern. The strength that got you here, that saves lives, builds businesses, leads teams, starts running on autopilot past its optimal range, and that's where the shadow lives. So what do we actually do about this? So I want to be clear about something before I share these tools. The concept of strengths and their shadows comes from the work of Tracy Izard, which I was introduced to through the leadership framework she talked about. And out of respect for her work, I'm not going to lay out the whole talk that we had here. She has lots of details available online, and you can purchase her strengths and shadows cards through her website. What I will do is give you the universal patterns I see and point you towards a tool you can use to start exploring your own. So if you want to look into your own character strengths, the VIA or VIA Character Strengths Assessment is free, it's online, and it's one of the most well-validated tools in positive psychology. I'll link it in the show notes. Give it a go. It takes about 15 minutes and it will give you a ranked list of your top strengths. And from there, I want you to start asking the harder question, what does this look like when I overdo it? And that's the work. Here's a guide on how to structure it. The strength shadow mapping exercise. So grab a piece of paper or open a note on your phone and write down your 3 top professional strengths. These might come from the VIA assessment, or they might just be qualities you're known for, the things people rely on you for. For each strength, write its shadow. What does it look like when you overdo it? When you're running on autopilot under pressure? Reliability might become rigidity, empathy to avoidance, analytical thinking becomes emotional absence. You know yourself the best. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you operating right now with each strength? 1 being significant underuse, 10 being overuse. So you're looking for that optimal mean that I referenced earlier. So most high performers would probably sit between 7 and 9 on their dominant strength, and the optimal zone is usually somewhere in the middle. Next, identify your early warning signals. What are the first signs that you're sliding into shadow territory? And for me, one of those zones is running behind in clinic. That's one of my signals. Now, let's layer in the rest of the framework. So I'm going to use my 4 pillars of burnout recovery that I often reference in this podcast. Mindset. Maybe do a weekly strengths check-in. Once a week, ask yourself one question. Is this strength serving me right now, or is it controlling me? That's it. Simple, but requires your honesty. Notice when you feel energized by using your strengths versus when you feel drained. Support. Bring your colleagues into using these skills and using these tools. Have a shadow spotting partner. This can be really powerful and underused. So identify one person in your life, maybe a trusted colleague, a partner, or a friend who can call it when they see it. Ask them directly, what do you notice when I'm at my best? And what do you notice when I'm overdoing it? So you're going to have to frame this around your strengths and shadows concept. Most people in your life already know the answer. You're giving them that permission to tell you. Movement, the physical reset. When you notice yourself sliding into shadow behavior, the rigidity, the overanalysis, the avoidance, why not use movement to interrupt the pattern? It doesn't have to be a full-on gym session. 30 seconds of stretching, a walk to the end of the corridor, a deliberate change of your physical state. Your nervous system responds to movement in a way that thinking alone can't replicate. And finally, sleep, the absolute non-negotiable. High performers are particularly prone to sacrificing sleep in order to maintain their standards. But here's what the research tells us, and this connects directly back to Arnsten's work on the prefrontal cortex. Sleep deprivation accelerates the very process that pushes you into the shadow zone. You make worse decisions. You default harder to your dominant patterns. You lose the flexibility that keeps your strengths in their optimal zone. Sleep isn't a reward for getting everything done. It's the foundation that makes everything else possible. So here's a bit of time to reflect with 3 questions here. What strength of mine has caused me the most stress in the past month? When do I feel energized by my strengths? And when do I feel drained by them? Who in my life could help me recognize when I'm overdoing it? And here's some action steps if you wish to take them. Complete the strength shadow mapping exercise. Write it down. Number 2, take the VIA character strengths assessment if you haven't done it already. 3, choose one strength to watch more closely this week, just one, and set a daily check-in. Am I in my optimal zone with this today? And that's it. That's how burnout recovery happens, with small, consistent awareness and then small 1% changes that you start to do. I'd love to hear what comes up for you. So share your strength shadow discoveries with one trusted person this week. And if you want to share them with me, you'll find me on the socials at the Burnout Recovery Doctor or Dr. Joe Braid on LinkedIn. And if you're not already subscribed to my weekly newsletter, The Sunday Long Game, that's where I go deeper on all of this. The link is in the show notes. Wrapping up, I'll tell you about next week. We're diving into a concept that genuinely changed how I think about sustainable performance. Again, it's another tool that I brought back from Italy, and it changes one of the most deeply held beliefs of high achievers everywhere. Why leaving something in the tank isn't lazy, it's strategic. We're talking about the 80% rule, and it might be the most counterintuitive performance tool you've never used. I'll see you then. Ready to take the next step in your burnout recovery journey? Visit drjoebraid.com for free resources, all 150 plus podcast episodes and information about my keynote speaking. Links are in the show notes. Your well-being matters. Protect the asset that is you. You know those moments where you're between patients, everything's moving fast, and you just want to double-check something without falling down a rabbit hole? Heidi Evidence helps you to get to a clear answer with citations you can see pulled from trusted guidelines, research, and even your own uploaded docs. It's completely ad-free, no sponsored results, no weird ranking, and it's unlimited, region-aware, and fits into the workflow you're already using. It supports your clinical judgment. You stay in control. Find evidence in the chaos. Search HeidiHealth.com. Be your best you. Rely on MEGA for your protection and support, serving doctors for over 125 years through insurance, education, medical legal advice, and member benefits designed to help you thrive and succeed. Insurance issued by Medical Insurance Australia, which has not taken into account your objectives or situation. Before you make any decisions about our policies, please read our PDS and consider your needs. Call us for a copy or visit mega.com.au.